Hello everyone, my name is Hope and welcome to Bible Teller. Abraham was a good and faithful servant of God. His faith was tested and he passed the test. Stay tuned as we look into the story of the father of faith. When Abraham was an old man, God told him that he would have a son. Even though he knew that he and his wife, Sarah, were too old to have children, he believed God anyway. God honored Abraham's faith and made him and Sarah young. Little Isaac was born. Abraham knew that Isaac was God's special gift and he loved him very, very much. Because Jesus had not come to earth yet, God required his people to provide a sacrifice to cover their sins. Godly people like Abraham took innocent animals and killed them as a sacrifice to God. It was a really sad thing to do. A believer would lead a lamb or goat up to an altar and lay his hands on it and kill it. As it died, the believer knew that the animal was dying because of their sins. It must have been really hard killing an animal because of things that you did wrong, but things were about to get even harder for Abraham. One day, God came to Abraham and told him that he wanted a greater sacrifice. Abraham was to take his own precious son, Isaac, and offer him as a sacrifice to God. The very son he had patiently waited for all these years was to be killed. How could he offer his own son as a sacrifice? But Abraham didn't question God, he just obeyed him. He told Isaac to come with him up to Mount Moriah. It was a 3-day journey, way high up on the mountain. As Abraham and Isaac walked up to the place where Isaac was to be sacrificed, Isaac noticed that something was missing. He looked up at his dad and humbly asked, "Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering." Next, Abraham took Isaac and tied him up on the altar. Abraham was ready to kill the son that God had promised him, but Abraham had faith. He knew that God wanted it. Somehow everything would come out just right. Abraham took out his knife and raised his arm, ready to slay his son. Just then the angel of the Lord called out of heaven and said, "Abraham, Abraham." The angel stopped Abraham because he proved that he was willing to obey God, no matter what he asked of him. Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. He knew that God, in fact, did provide a sacrifice for himself. Abraham took the ram instead of his precious son and offered it up to God as a sacrifice. Isaac was a type of Jesus. Isaac was going to be offered as a sacrifice. Just like Jesus had to carry his own cross to Mount Calvary, Isaac carried the wood to his own death to Mount Moriah. Abraham was a type of God. He showed that he was willing to offer his own son to cover sins. Abraham must have been so thankful that God spared him from having to offer Isaac. But God did offer his own son to cover our sins. Jesus did have to die for us. We should be very thankful to God for giving his own son so we could be forgiven. He did it for you and me. Thank you for watching. You can read this story in the book of Genesis, chapter 22. Don't forget to let us know what you've learned from this story. God bless.